Hello everybody, hope you're doing okay. Now the HOKA Mach 6 has come in. I thought I'd do a good point, bad point quickie video. And this is in the dusk shadow colourway, which for all intents and purposes to me looks to be a blue with a bit of green. So take of that what you will. So the first good point is the price, £140 at retail. I managed to contact Sports Shoes for their website and offer them 90% of the price. And they kindly sent me them free delivery and it arrives next day. I used the 10% discount code. So yeah, maybe I'll make an influencer yet and get that 90% price down to something a bit less, but all intents and purposes I pay for these myself. So a bad point is when you read the specs, this has got an EVA midsole, which traditionally means that it was a good shoe 10 years ago, and every influencer, YouTuber now would snarl their nose up at these things now and say this is absolutely terrible, but it is super critical, which means it must be not too bad, but we'll come on to that a bit later on. Now, a good point for me, perhaps a bad point for most other people, these actually fit reasonably narrowly. I would say in a pecking order between the Speed 4, the Rebel V4 and the Mach 6 here. The Mach 6 fits the narrowest. I would say the Speed 4 fits the next narrowest, and the Rebel V4 is so wide that I don't think I'm even going to be able to wear them, and they even do a wide version of this. They also do a wide version of this shoe as well, so it's quite good actually when you have a shoe where the standard version is sort of like narrow to medium and the wide version is presumably medium to wide, which makes far more sense than New Balance, who just make wide shoes or very wide shoes as far as I can tell. So another bad point about this shoe, it has no plate. That's no dinner plate, carbon plate or nylon plate. A good point, however, is that if it has no plate, you tell all your friends that how much work you have to do in a shoe, and you reassure yourself that you would never get injured in a shoe without a plate, because there's been so much research that people keep pointing out that if you wear carbon plates all the time, you're bound to get injured. I've never actually seen this research, of course, but just goes to show that if you have a shoe with no plate, then it must be good because, well, anyway. So a good point, you'll be glad to hear that I've done thorough testing of this shoe, one run for 8.5 miles and an hour and a quarter. Hasn't yet fallen apart. You can see that the outsole is looking quite intact. Some YouTubers seem to think that once they've run once in a shoe, they need to buy 2 or 3 more pairs just in case they would wear out. I think this shoe might be good for a few more runs yet, but HOKA shoes traditionally in the EVA midsole tend to not last very long. The ring cord was notorious for not lasting very long at all. So I've got perhaps higher hopes of this one, but remains to be seen. I can't yet give any predictions on where, but suffice to say that, yeah, after one run, I'll be able to take it out for a few more. A bad point, depending on how you view it, I found this shoe quite firm and quite stiff, even though it doesn't have a plate. It's not very flexible, which in a way was kind of not quite what I was expecting. I'd heard it was like super sort of smooth, and this is the first Mach shoe I've had, so that was a slight surprise, I must say. But if you prefer a firmer shoe, then I think you would like this. I was expecting just a bit more squash, to be honest, but yeah, it wasn't too bad, but yeah, perhaps not quite what I was expecting. Good point or bad point, depending on how you view it, is I just definitely noticed this is really just a lightweight daily trainer. I did some early miles in a straight line where I was able to get down to like a reasonable steady pace for me, just under 8-minute miling, sort of 7:45, something like that. Nothing particularly fast, but it felt like I was cruising along quite nicely, but equally didn't really feel like I was wanting to sort of get up and go much faster. I was admittedly quite tired today, but you know, sometimes you've put on the shoe and it just wants to make you go fast. I didn't really feel that like it about this one, but equally it's far from a brick. So definitely sort of a middling, sort of lightweight daily trainer, which is exactly why I got it for, really. So in that sense, perhaps exactly what I was expecting. A bad point, although I'm totally aware of it, all HOKA shoes pretty much have a 5mm drop, and I always struggle a bit with 5mm drops. I always feel like I'd prefer 8 to 10. Maybe that's just what I'm used to. I just feel like you have to work a bit harder with 5mm drops. It just feels like a bit more sort of slappy, but maybe it's actually a good thing to actually wear different drops on different days, and just to get the feet a bit more used to it. And obviously when I wear spikes on the track, that has effectively almost a 0 drop. So yeah, in that sense, perhaps it's good to rotate them round, but not my favourite choice of drop for sure. A good point is I thought that these fit true to size. This is a UK 13.5 for me. Now I've noticed sometimes on YouTube, some reviewers get a bit confused about UK sizes. Now HOKA, New Balance and Adidas all share a sort of a common theme where having their UK sizes half a size less than the US size, which tends to be a traditional sort of like equivalent size for everybody. So all my shoes are US 14, but in HOKA, New Balance and Adidas, I have to go for 13.5. In Nike, Saucony, Brooks and Asics, I would go for a 13 because they have a 1 size differential. So it's very important, I think, when you talk about true to size, you have to be true to size for the brand that you're particularly using. And if people say they have to go up half a size in a HOKA or a New Balance, then treat that with an air of caution, because actually what they really mean is get the right size for you, and actually half a size up is what it's meant to be. So good point sort of about the outsole. Well, it has some rubber on the outsole and it was quite wet and a bit muddy today, and I didn't manage to fall over, but I'm always a bit cautious when it's a turn on slightly wet conditions. So I always think with an outsole, you definitely have to sort of bear in mind that caution is the operative word, and definitely this isn't a shoe that is obviously designed for trails. Might be decent for towpaths, but I think you would find that you're going to get your feet rather wet and muddy quite quickly. So yeah, buyer beware, as it were. Sort of a bad point. People often ask, could I run a marathon in this, or could I race in this, or could I do sessions in this? Well, of course you can do anything and anything if you wanted to, but would I want to? Would it be the best choice for me? Well, absolutely not. This is very much a shoe I want to take out for my sort of more ploddy days, with perhaps a bit of extra lightness to give it a bit of extra spring in the step, but certainly wouldn't be wanting to race in this, certainly wouldn't be run too far in this, and I certainly wouldn't be wanting to do sessions in this. But of course you could do if you had to, and it's one of those shoes, a bit like say the Peg Turbo or the Endorphin Speed. I think if you had one shoe to put in your suitcase for going away, then I think you'd be quite happy to do all your runs in this. But as with any sort of everyday do-it-all shoe, they're not really good at everything, but they're quite good at everything as well. I think a bad point about these sort of middle tier shoes that I call them, like the Mach 6 here, or the Speed 4, or the Rebel V4, or say the Boston 12, they're all a bit something and nothing for me, because they're all sort of a shoe which is not overly cheap, but it's not actually very super. It's a shoe that clearly has a lot of compromises. It's sort of priced almost half the price of the top tier racing shoes. And for me, with large feet and these shoes tending to be quite heavy, even when they're sort of 300 grams, you still feel like most days if I wanted to go fast, I would reach for one of those carbon racers, just because I've got plenty of them. But if you didn't have the budget, or you wanted to try something different, then I think they would work well. But I just sort of feel for me that there are shoes I like to try, but I'm always feeling that, oh, you know, I'm a bit disappointed. But equally, I found these days that, what's the saying, it can be too much of a good thing. So I certainly don't want to be one of those runners who always wears my favourite Vaporflies every day, because I think after a while, if you start plodding in them, then you kind of lose any impact you do on a good day. So I think a shoe like this is quite important for those sort of easier days. And it's a shoe that is a lot lighter than, say, one of the really heavy sort of daily trainers. Although I was in the Invincible yesterday at 380 grams, but I had sort of like sole arch and I wanted like maximum cushion, so it worked quite well for that. On days when I think I've got more spring in my step and want a bit less shoe underfoot, then this may be a shoe to choose. But yeah, so in that sense, I think I'm glad I got it, but I need to do a bit more testing. I think of all the shoes that I've mentioned so far, I'd still say the Speed 4 is the favourite out of this and the Mach 6. I don't think I'm even going to bother to run in the Rebel V4. I just think it's too wide for me. I just think it's a shoe that needs to go back for a refund, and largely why I got these, because I was rather hoping these would work well, and even though they are the lightest of the shoes by 25 grams, I was rather disappointed, and yeah, so HOKA wins the day on that one, I think. But yeah, so what do you think of all these shoes? This is a shoe you're interested in? Hope you find this interesting. Like and subscribe with that, and see you in the next one then. Bye.